Imagine two students sitting for the same difficult exam. Both are bright, both prepared, and both hit a wall on a question they cannot solve. The first student feels a cold wave of dread. To them, this single problem is a verdict. It is whispering that maybe they are not as smart as they thought, that the ceiling of their ability has just been discovered, and that there is nothing to be done about it. The second student feels something entirely different. To them, the hard question is interesting. It is a puzzle that reveals the exact edge of what they currently know, a map of where to go next. One student is shrinking. The other is leaning in. And here is the strange and hopeful truth at the center of Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. The difference between these two students may have almost nothing to do with talent, and almost everything to do with a single belief they carry about the nature of ability itself. That belief, invisible and rarely examined, quietly shapes how they respond to challenge, how they interpret failure, how much they persist, and ultimately how far they go. Mindset argues that this hidden belief is not fixed in stone. It can be seen, questioned, and changed. And when it changes, a great deal changes with it. This is a book about the surprising power of what we believe about ourselves and how the smallest shift in that belief can reshape a life. Carol Dweck is a psychologist who has spent decades studying motivation, personality, and human development, much of it at Stanford University, where she is a professor. Her work did not begin with a grand theory. It began, as good science often does, with a small and stubborn puzzle. Early in her career, she was watching children tackle challenging problems, and she noticed that some of them did not merely tolerate difficulty. They actively relished it. One boy, faced with problems getting harder and harder, rubbed his hands together and declared that he loved a challenge. Another said, hopefully, that he was hoping this would be informative. Dweck had assumed that people either cope with failure or they do not. But these children were not coping with failure. They did not even seem to think they were failing. They thought they were learning. That observation set her on a research path that would occupy much of her professional life. Over years of careful experiments, Dweck and her colleagues traced this difference back to what she came to call people's implicit theories about their own qualities. Some people, she found, operate as if their intelligence, talent, and character are fixed traits, handed out in fixed amounts, essentially carved in stone. She named this the fixed mindset. Others operate as if these same qualities are more like muscles, capable of being developed through effort, strategy, and help from others. This she named the growth mindset. Mindset, the book, published in 2006 and later expanded, brought this research out of academic journals and into the hands of parents, teachers, coaches, managers, and ordinary readers trying to understand themselves. It became one of the most influential popular psychology books of its era, its language seeping into schools and boardrooms around the world. It is worth remembering, though, that beneath the accessible stories lies a serious body of experimental research, and that Dweck herself has spent recent years correcting the oversimplifications that grew up around her ideas. The book is best understood not as a slogan, but as an invitation to look honestly at how we think about the possibility of change. At the heart of mindset are the two contrasting beliefs I have already introduced, but it is worth slowing down to feel how deeply they run. The fixed mindset is the conviction that your basic qualities, your intelligence, your artistic sense, your athletic gift, your very personality, are essentially set. In this view, life becomes a long series of tests, each one an occasion to prove that you have the goods, or to reveal that you do not. The growth mindset, by contrast, rests on the belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate. It does not claim that everyone is identical or that anyone can become anything with a wish. It simply holds that a person's true potential is unknowable, that no one can foresee what can be accomplished with years of passion and effort and guidance. What makes this distinction so powerful is that it is not really about optimism or personality. It is about a theory, a working assumption about how the world of ability operates. And that assumption acts like a lens. Put on the fixed lens, and every situation gets sorted into a simple, high-stakes question. Will I succeed or fail? Will I look smart or dumb? Will I be accepted or rejected? Put on the growth lens, and the very same situation gets sorted differently. What can I learn here? How can I improve? What will it take? The events are identical. The meaning is transformed. Dweck's crucial insight is that most of us are not consciously choosing a lens. We inherited it, absorbed it from the messages around us, and we wear it without noticing. The first act of freedom is simply to realize that we are wearing a lens at all. I want to be careful here, because it is easy to hear this and turn it into a moral hierarchy: growth mindset good, fixed mindset bad, and to start congratulating ourselves for being growth-minded people. Dweck resists this, and so should we. No one has a pure growth mindset about everything. Each of us is a mixture, growth-oriented in some domains and rigidly fixed in others. The person who happily embraces challenges at work may crumble at the first sign of difficulty in a relationship, or on a tennis court, or in front of a piano. The mindset is not a fixed label we can pin on ourselves. It is a pattern of belief that shifts across situations and can be nudged. That, again, is the whole point. If these were merely two philosophies people held quietly in their heads, they would be a curiosity. What makes mindset consequential is that the belief drives behavior, and behavior compounds over a lifetime. Consider what the fixed mindset does to effort. If ability is fixed, then needing to work hard becomes a kind of confession. It implies you are not naturally gifted, because the truly talented, in this story, should not have to strain. So people in a fixed mindset often develop a quiet contempt for effort, and they may hold back precisely so that, if they fail, they can tell themselves they never really tried. Effort withheld protects the image of potential. The tragedy is that this protects an image while sabotaging the reality. The growth mindset flips the meaning of effort entirely. Here, effort is what turns ability into accomplishment. It is not evidence of deficiency. It is the mechanism of growth, the thing that makes talent bloom. Nobody great, in this view, got there without it. Now consider what each mindset does with failure, which may be the deepest theme in the book. In the fixed mindset, failure is transformed from an action into an identity. You do not simply fail at something. You become a failure. The setback defines you, and, because it feels like a statement about your permanent worth, you will do almost anything to avoid it, including avoiding challenges where you might stumble. In the growth mindset, failure is painful too. Dweck never pretends otherwise, but it does not define you. It is information. It tells you where your current approach fell short and points toward what to try next. The failure is something you do and then move through, not something you are. There is a beautiful piece of evidence for how physically real this difference is. In brainwave studies, when people were given answers to hard questions, those with a fixed mindset showed the most attention when they were simply told whether they were right or wrong. Their brains lit up for the verdict, the grade, the judgment. But when it came to the actual correct answer, the information that could help them learn, their attention faded. People with a growth mindset showed the opposite pattern. They paid close attention to the information that could improve them. Two people can sit through the identical feedback, and one is listening for the score while the other is listening for the lesson. Over years, those different patterns of attention build different people. Some of Dweck's most striking findings come from schools, and they should give every parent and teacher pause. In one line of research, students were given a set of problems they did well on, and then praised in one of two ways. Some were praised for their intelligence, told they must be really smart. Others were praised for their effort, told they must have worked hard. This is a tiny difference, a single sentence, the kind of thing a well-meaning adult says without a second thought. Yet the consequences diverged sharply. The children praised for intelligence became more fixed. When later offered a choice, they avoided harder tasks that risked exposing them as not so smart after all. When they hit difficulty, they lost confidence and enjoyment, and their performance dropped. Some even lied about their scores afterward. The children praised for effort chose the harder, more educational tasks, stayed engaged through difficulty, and improved. The lesson here is subtle and important. Praising intelligence sounds like a gift, an act of encouragement, but it can plant a fixed mindset by teaching children that their worth rides on a label and that the label is fragile. The moment they struggle, the praise turns into pressure because now they have something to lose. praising the process, the effort, the strategy, the persistence, the willingness to try a new approach, teaches something more durable. It teaches that the things within your control are what matter, and those things are always available to you. Dweck also popularized a small phrase with large implications, the power of the word yet. Some schools, rather than giving a failing grade, give the grade of not yet. The difference is not cosmetic. A failing grade tells a student, this is where you have ended up. Not yet tells a student, this is where you are on a path that continues. It places the present struggle inside a story of movement rather than a story of finality. For a child who has come to believe they are simply bad at math or bad at reading, that one word can crack open a door that had felt permanently shut. It reframes the entire emotional experience of not being able to do something, turning a closed verdict into an open question. The book widens its lens from classrooms to companies, and here Dweck examines leaders through the same frame. She contrasts leaders driven by the need to prove their own greatness with leaders devoted to growth, learning, and the development of everyone around them. The fixed mindset leader, she suggests, tends to see the organization as a stage for demonstrating personal superiority. Such leaders can be brilliant and charismatic, but they often surround themselves with people who reflect their glory rather than challenge their thinking. They struggle to hear bad news because bad news threatens the image of the infallible genius at the top. They may take credit ravenously and assign blame freely. When the company falters, they double down on protecting their reputation rather than confronting reality. The growth-minded leader, by contrast, tends to ask questions, invite disagreement, admit gaps, and build systems that develop talent throughout the organization rather than concentrating brilliance at the summit. Dweck draws on well-known corporate stories to illustrate the contrast, including cautionary tales of companies where a culture of genius curdled into arrogance and collapse. The larger point transcends any particular executive. An organization itself can hold a mindset, a shared belief about whether people are fixed quantities to be ranked and sorted, or developing beings to be grown. A company operating from a fixed mindset hoards its stars, punishes honest mistakes, and treats hiring as a hunt for finished products. A company operating from a growth mindset invests in development, treats setbacks as data, and trusts that capability can be built. These cultures produce very different experiences for the people inside them, and, Dweck argues, very different results over time. I find this organizational extension genuinely useful, though I would offer a note of caution that Dweck herself came to emphasize. It is tempting for a company to simply declare itself a growth mindset organization, to paste the phrase on a wall and move on, while continuing to reward only flawless performance and to punish the very risk-taking that growth requires. A mindset that lives only in slogans is worse than useless, because it breeds cynicism. The belief has to be built into what is actually rewarded, tolerated, and modeled by those at the top. Otherwise, the words become a mask over an unchanged reality. One of the more unexpected and moving sections of the book turns to love and relationships, where the mindsets show up in ways many of us will recognize uncomfortably. In the fixed mindset, there is a seductive and damaging belief that if a relationship is right, it should require no effort. If you and your partner are truly compatible, the thinking goes, then you should understand each other instinctively, agree naturally, and glide along without friction. Problems, in this view, are not challenges to work through. They're signs. They reveal that the relationship, or the partner, or you, is fundamentally flawed. And so conflict becomes catastrophic because it seems to expose a permanent incompatibility rather than a solvable difference. The fixed mindset also warps how we handle blame and forgiveness. If people's characters are fixed, then a partner who hurts you has simply shown their true, unchangeable nature, and the wound can harden into a permanent verdict. There is a bitter comfort in this, a way of feeling superior in one's injury, but it forecloses growth for both people. The growth mindset approaches love as something two developing people build together over time. Differences are expected. Skills of communication and understanding can be learned. A partner's hurtful behavior is serious, but it is not necessarily the final word on who they are or what the relationship can become. This does not mean tolerating genuine mistreatment, and Dweck is not naive about that. It means holding open the possibility that difficulty is part of building something real, rather than proof that it was never meant to be. When I read this section, I was struck by how many relationships might be quietly poisoned not by any dramatic betrayal, but simply by the corrosive expectation that love should be effortless, and the disappointment that follows when it turns out, like everything worthwhile, to require care and work. Because mindsets are learned, the people who raise and teach and coach us are constantly transmitting them, usually without meaning to. Dweck devotes considerable attention to how adults pass mindsets to children, and her conclusions ask a lot of us. Every interaction, she suggests, carries a message. When a child brings home a perfect score and we exclaim about how smart they are, we may be sending a fixed message, teaching them to value the label above the learning. When a child struggles and we rush to reassure them that not everyone is good at this and that is fine, we may, with the kindest intentions, be teaching them that ability is fixed and some doors are simply closed to them. Even our disappointment and our comfort can carry hidden theories about whether people can change. The alternative is not empty praise or relentless pressure. Dweck is clear that a growth mindset is not about telling children they are wonderful no matter what, which is just another form of hollow, fixed mindset flattery. Nor is it about pushing them mercilessly. It is about focusing attention on process, on the strategies they used, the effort they invested, the improvement they made, the ways they responded to getting stuck. It is about treating struggle as a normal and honorable part of learning rather than as an emergency to be smoothed away. A parent with a growth mindset can love a child unconditionally while still holding high standards and conveying faith that the child can meet them. Those two things, warmth and high expectations, are not in tension. Together they say to a child, "I believe in what you can become, and I am here to help you get there." The same holds for coaches and teachers, and Dweck profiles great ones who embodied this. The best coaches she describes were not the ones who screamed and belittled to extract performance, nor the ones who simply flattered their stars. They were the ones who conveyed a deep belief in their players' capacity to grow, who taught relentlessly, who treated conditioning and preparation and character as things that could be developed, and who made their athletes feel that they were on a journey of improvement rather than a stage of constant judgment. That is a model worth carrying into any role where we are responsible for helping another person grow. I want to spend a moment on something Dweck added and stressed in later reflections, because it is where the idea is most often misused. As the growth mindset became fashionable, a distorted version spread, which she calls the false growth mindset. In this counterfeit version, growth mindset gets reduced to being open-minded, or feeling good, or simply praising effort no matter what. Teachers began praising effort even when children were getting nowhere, as if the mere act of trying deserved a trophy. But effort that is not working is not the goal. Effort is a means, not an end. Praising fruitless struggle is its own kind of dishonesty, and children see through it. The genuine growth mindset is about learning and progress, and when effort is not producing progress, the growth-minded response is to try new strategies, to seek help, to change the approach, not to keep grinding at a wall while being told how hard you are working. Dweck also acknowledges, with real honesty, that we all contain a fixed mindset and that it never fully disappears. She describes what she calls fixed mindset triggers, the moments that flip us into defensiveness and self-protection, a big challenge, a stinging criticism, an unfavorable comparison to someone else. The goal is not to pretend we have transcended all of this and achieved some pure enlightened state. That claim is itself a fixed mindset trap, a way of collecting the growth mindset as a permanent badge. The goal is to notice our fixed mindset reactions when they arise, to get curious about them, even to give that reactive part of ourselves a name and learn its patterns, and then to gently guide ourselves back toward learning. This is far more humble and far more realistic than the cheerful caricature the idea sometimes becomes. Change is not a switch you flip once. It is a practice you return to again and again, especially in the moments you least feel like it. So what should we actually carry away from mindset, beyond the memorable vocabulary of fixed and growth? The first takeaway is that beliefs about the nature of ability are not neutral. they are engines. What you believe about whether you can change quietly determines whether you try, and trying over time determines what becomes of you. This means that examining your own hidden assumptions is not idle self-reflection. It is one of the highest leverage things you can do. The second takeaway is a new relationship with effort and failure. If you take only one practical thing from this book, let it be this. Treat difficulty as a sign that you are learning, not a sign that you are inadequate. When something is hard, that is the growth happening. When you fail, extract the information and keep the lesson while dropping the verdict. This single reframe, practiced consistently, can change the entire emotional texture of a working life, turning dread into curiosity. The third takeaway concerns the words we use with others, especially the young. Praise the process, not the person's fixed traits. Notice strategies, effort, persistence, and improvement. Reserve the word yet for anyone, including yourself, who has decided they simply cannot do something. Those small linguistic habits are the medium through which mindsets are transmitted, and we are all constantly transmitting. The fourth takeaway is the reach of these ideas across every domain of life. The same belief that shapes how a student faces an exam shapes how a leader faces bad news, how partners face conflict, how a parent faces a child's struggle. Wherever there is challenge and the possibility of judgment, the two mindsets are quietly at work, and wherever they are at work, they can be shifted. The fifth takeaway is the honest, humbling one. There is no finished, purely growth-minded person. We are all mixtures, all triggered into defensiveness by certain challenges and criticisms, all capable of hollowing the idea out into a feel-good slogan if we are not careful. The real work is ongoing, situational, and quietly courageous. It lives in the specific moments when you would rather protect your image and you choose to learn instead. In the end, Mindset is a book about hope, but not the soft, wishful kind. It is a hard-won, evidence-based hope, the kind that asks something of you. Carol Dweck is not promising that you can become anything you dream of simply by believing hard enough. That would be its own fixed fantasy, a magic ceiling instead of a magic floor. What she is offering is something more grounded and, I think, more genuinely liberating. She is telling us that the story we have been told, and have often told ourselves, about our abilities being carved in stone, is not the only story available, and it may not even be true. That the smart child and the slow child, the natural and the struggler, are not permanent categories, but snapshots of a moment, taken from lives that are still in motion. That the question is never quite whether you can do something, but whether you can do it yet. What stays with me, after sitting with these ideas, is how ordinary the moments of transformation really are. They are not grand epiphanies. They are the tiny forks in a hard afternoon, the instant when a problem defeats you and you decide what it means. In that instant, you can hear the fixed voice saying this proves you do not have it, or you can hear the growth voice asking what this is here to teach you. Neither voice is the truth. They are lenses, and you get to choose which one to look through, over and over, across a lifetime. Dweck's gift is to make that choice visible, and in making it visible, to make it yours. The next time you hit the wall that the first student dreaded, you might, just for a moment, remember the second student rubbing their hands together and think, quietly, that this is going to be informative. That small shift, repeated, is how a life changes.